I stood on my own doorstep, exhausted from 20 hours of flying, jet lagged beyond belief, and utterly confused. My key wasn't working. After 3 attempts, I sat down my suitcase and peered through the window of my Airbnb property, only to see a middle-aged woman with a blonde bob haircut lounging on my couch, drinking what appeared to be my imported wine. I knocked on the window and she jumped, startled. Then, recognizing me from neighborhood meetings, her expression shifted from surprise to smugness. "This is my residence now, squatters' rights," she shouted through the glass, holding up a piece of paper that looked suspiciously official. I recognized her immediately. Karen Westfield, the HOA president, who had been sending me passive-aggressive emails about my unapproved exterior paint color for months. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Was this some kind of sick joke? I pulled out my phone and started recording, which seemed to agitate her further. "You can record all you want," she said with a dismissive wave of her hand. "I've been living here for 30 days. You abandoned the property, look it up, perfectly legal." What Karen didn't realize was that I had already documented everything. The security cameras I'd installed before leaving for my 3-month work assignment in Japan had been silently recording her illegal entry and occupation, and now her reign of terror was about to come to an abrupt end. I bought this second property 2 years ago as an investment when housing prices dipped in our suburban community of Oakwood Heights. The neighborhood was peaceful, well-maintained, and just 20 minutes from downtown, perfect for short-term rentals. I renovated it myself, adding modern appliances and tasteful decor that photographed beautifully for the Airbnb listing. Within weeks, I was booked solid, earning enough to cover the mortgage, plus a decent profit margin. Everything was running smoothly until the Homeowners Association, under Karen's new leadership, decided to crack down on what she called transient occupancies, degrading our community standards. Karen had been elected HOA president 6 months ago, running unopposed on a platform of neighborhood integrity and property value protection. What that actually meant was micromanaging everyone's lives with increasingly absurd rules. No parking on the street after 8 p.m., no garbage bins visible from the road for more than 6 hours on collection day, no holiday decorations before December 1st or after January 2nd, and her latest crusade eliminating all short-term rentals from Oakwood Heights while I was working abroad. My property manager, Tim, had called to tell me the HOA was sending violation notices about my Airbnb operation. Despite our neighborhood having no explicit ban on short-term rentals, Karen was determined to shut me down then. 3 weeks ago, my listing mysteriously disappeared from the platform when Tim went to check on the property. He found a cease and desist letter taped to the door the next day. He was hospitalized with appendicitis, leaving the property unmonitored for 2 critical weeks. Karen, it seemed, had been watching and waiting for her opportunity standing outside my own home. I called Tim, who was still recovering. "Karen Westfield is inside my house, claiming she lives there now," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "What? That's insane," Tim replied with genuine shock in his voice. "She must have moved in right after I was hospitalized. I'm so sorry, man." "Not your fault," I assured him. "But I need to know, did you give her a key or permission to enter for any reason?" "Absolutely not," he said firmly. "She's been asking the HOA board for access to inspect suspected illegal rental properties, but we all voted it down. She must have found another way in." As I ended the call, I noticed one of my neighbors, Elaine, watching curiously from her driveway. I waved her over, hoping for some clarity on the situation. "Oh, Dave, you're back," Elaine said with visible relief. "We've been wondering what was going on. Karen told everyone you'd abandoned the property, and the HOA was handling it until legal ownership could be determined. She filed some kind of noise complaint about 2 weeks ago, then declared the property abandoned. The next day, a locksmith came, and then she started moving her things in. We thought it seemed odd, but she had all this paperwork and kept citing HOA bylaws and squatters' rights laws. I thanked Elaine for the information and decided it was time to involve the authorities. I called 911 and explained the situation as calmly as possible while waiting for the police to arrive. Karen emerged from my house, arms crossed, wearing an expression of righteous indignation. "You're trespassing on private property," she said with exaggerated patience, as if explaining something to a child. "I've established legal residency here and you're harassing me. I'll have to report this to the police." "I own this house, Karen," I replied, fighting to keep my composure. I have the deed and mortgage statements on my phone. You broke in and changed my locks while I was working overseas. I most certainly did not break in. She responded, her voice rising with indignation. I have a legal lease agreement, and I've been living here for over 30 days. That gives me tenant protections under state law. You'll need to file for a formal eviction, which will take months. In the meantime, this is my legal residence when the police arrived. Karen was ready. She produced what looked like a rental agreement with my forged signature and a series of utility bills she'd somehow managed to put in her name. She spoke confidently about adverse possession laws and tenant rights, throwing around legal terminology with practiced ease. The officers, unable to determine the true ownership on the spot, explained that this appeared to be a civil matter, requiring court intervention, sir. If she's been here for 30 days, as she claims, we can't remove her without an eviction order. One officer explained apologetically. You'll need to file in housing court. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This woman had broken into my home, was drinking my alcohol, sleeping in my bed, and the police couldn't do anything about it. I felt a surge of anger, but managed to stay professional. Officer, I have security footage of her breaking in 2 weeks ago. She was never given permission to enter, and that document is forged. This isn't a tenant dispute. It's breaking and entering, trespassing, and fraud. The mention of security footage caused Karen's confident expression to falter slightly. The officers asked to see the footage, so I pulled up the cloud storage app on my phone there. She was 2 weeks ago peering through windows, testing doors, and eventually returning with a locksmith who appeared uncomfortable with the situation. The timestamp clearly showed it had been only 14 days, not the 30 she claimed was required for tenant protections. I had permission from the HOA board. Karen insisted, her voice growing shrill. As president, I have emergency access rights to all properties in violation of community standards. The officers looked at each other clearly, recognizing this was more serious than initially thought. Ma'am, HOA authority doesn't extend to entering private residences without owner consent or a court order. The senior officer explained, we're going to need you to gather your essential belongings and vacate the premises immediately. Karen's face flushed crimson. This is outrageous. I know my rights. I'll sue all of you for harassment. Despite her protests, the officers escorted her outside while I waited, still processing the surreal situation. However, without an arrest warrant or clear evidence of criminal intent. They couldn't detain her. They advised me to change the locks again, document any damages, and file a formal complaint. After Karen stormed off to her actual home 3 streets over, I called a locksmith and then contacted a real estate attorney specializing in property disputes. What followed was 2 days of intense investigation and evidence gathering. My attorney, Melissa Jenkins, was both professional and ruthless. This isn't just an HOA overreach, she explained after reviewing my case based on the evidence we're looking at. Criminal trespassing, breaking and entering, forgery, fraud, and possibly embezzlement of HOA funds if she used their resources to facilitate this scheme. And from what I'm hearing from other homeowners who've contacted me, you weren't her first target. It turned out Karen had done this before. 3 other homeowners came forward with similar stories of Karen abusing her position to enter their homes, change locks, or remove property. She deemed in violation of HOA standards she had been systematically targeting homes whose owners were away, particularly those she suspected of operating short-term rentals. Most victims had settled quietly, intimidated by her legal threats, and afraid of prolonged court battles. Armed with comprehensive evidence, security footage, testimony from the locksmith, who now admitted Karen had misrepresented herself, bank records showing she'd used HOA funds to pay for the lock change, and statements from other victims, we returned to my property with police officers and a court order. 3 days later, Karen answered the door, wearing my bathrobe, looking completely unconcerned, until she saw the officers and my attorney behind me. Her smug expression vanished as the lead detective explained they had a warrant for her arrest on multiple charges, including burglary, fraud, forgery, and illegal occupancy. This is a mistake. I'm the HOA president, she shouted as they led her away, reading her rights. I was protecting property values. You can't arrest me for doing my job. But they could, and they did. The neighbors gathered on their lawns, watching in stunned silence as Karen was placed in the back of a police car, still shouting about her rights and how she'd sue everyone involved. I stood there feeling relieved, but also somewhat hollow. This wasn't how I'd expected my return home to go. The evidence against Karen was overwhelming. The district attorney charged her with second-degree burglary, criminal trespassing, forgery, fraud, and misappropriation of HOA funds, all felonies carrying serious penalties during the preliminary hearing. It was revealed she had targeted 7 properties in total, creating a pattern of criminal behavior that the judge found deeply troubling. Karen's perfect facade crumbled completely in court. Her attorney attempted to argue she was acting within her rights as HOA president, but the judge shut that down immediately. Homeowners associations have no legal authority to enter private residences without permission regardless of alleged violations. He stated firmly that's breaking and entering, plain and simple. In the end, Karen accepted a plea deal to avoid a full trial, 18 months in prison, 5 years probation, and restitution payments to all victims, totaling over $80,000 as the judge announced the sentence. Karen's face drained of color for someone who had built her identity around controlling others and maintaining a veneer of suburban perfectionism. The prospect of prison was clearly devastating. "But I was just enforcing the rules," she whispered, seemingly unable to comprehend that her actions had real consequences when the gavel came down, finalizing her sentence. Karen's carefully maintained composure finally shattered. She burst into tears, turning to glare at me with raw hatred as officers led her away. The woman who had terrorized our neighborhood with petty rules and power trips was now facing a reality where she had no control whatsoever. The HOA board unanimously voted to remove her from her position that same evening.